Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Sterling and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host, Bill Sterling. And Bill, boy, is there a lot of interesting discussion going on in our civil discourse. I'm finding anyway, I think you are too, especially on social media.
Yes.
Regarding all things impeachment related. Would you agree?
I agree. People are trying to work out their emotions on social media. It's a place for people to get their need for being heard met, and to try to work out, if they're willing, to work out understanding or work out clarity, which are very important needs for us as human beings. The trouble comes when someone is trying to validate their belief structure and trying to reinforce a point of view that's not in alignment with truth. So what happens is the person that's posting and the person that's responding to the post are looking at truth from different perspectives. One is looking from, I got to protect my guy, this is my identity. And the other one's going like, well, this is not congruent with the law, or congruent with the oath, or congruent with the office that one is holding. So that leads us to a kind of a cool foundation to talk about, the trial that is currently going on, as well as, what is the role of the Congress and the role of the Senate, to the best of our limited non-legal point of view, and the understanding and the misunderstanding that we have based on our core principles. Core principles are centered around the Constitution, and then, of course, the various different amendments or additions that we would then agree upon to specify what this Constitution is, and what it means to us as a nation that runs itself from itself. And that's why we elect an official, because we're trusting that that person is not only going to have the legal mindset, but also a compass that is a moral compass and a legal compass. The legal compass is something that we look at the court. The moral compass is the higher standard. And you'll keep noticing, even in the current situation, is there's a collapsing between this thing is not legal, therefore it's not criminal, therefore we got to throw it out. It's like, now we're holding the person to a moral standard. This is a higher standard because this is a higher office. We're not taking this out in a criminal court, but at the same time, we've got to hold this standard for this deliberative body, which is the Senate, and this investigative body, which is the Congress. So now all of a sudden, I just gave my 50-cent monologue. And now, Tom, I've got a post that I'd like to review, and I know that you have a post. Let's look at the post that you would like to review about a point that somebody made that all of a sudden it got your truth hackles up, and you said to yourself, hey, wait a minute, That's not the way I'm understanding this. I believe it's this thing over here. And let's see what we could do to be compassionate to the person as well as compassionate to yourself, because you kind of, we get ruffled when somebody says something that doesn't meet our need for truth. So,
Well, thanks, Bill. Yeah, I oftentimes I stay out of certain political discussions like this
yeah,
on Facebook because things do get heated and very divisive. But I also have been trying, dipping my toe in the water or foot in the water to have a civil discourse with people and to
good.
try to approach it with some compassion. So here, let me set this one up. So there, actually, I think this person's a mutual Facebook friend of yours and mine, but posted something that said, and this is what started it, said, no one prevents a witness who can exonerate him from testifying. Absolutely
Right.
no one, was the original thing. And it wasn't that post that I had any issue with, but it was a response, a comment on it, where this person says the problem is it's not supposed to be the job of the Senate to bring new witnesses and investigate and find new testimony. He said it's supposed to be the House's job to investigate and find all the witnesses and then give them to the Senate, and the Senate is just supposed to make a judgment based on all that evidence. And I respectfully disagreed. I actually started my comment saying, I respectfully disagree, and talking about, trying to have a healthy discourse, saying that the House is really like a prosecuting attorney investigating and deciding what charges to file, or also perhaps like a grand jury where some evidence is presented
Yes.
and they decide to file charges. Now, there will be
Yes.
witnesses, there will be testimony, there will be evidence, but when you then have a trial over all of that evidence, it doesn't mean that new evidence doesn't come to light after the charges were filed, and that new evidence isn't presented at trial, or new witnesses aren't requested to testify. And that was really my main point. And it's interesting, we went back and forth a little bit. I don't think he quite understood what I was trying to say at first, and I further had to explain that my main point was, you are trying to say that the Senate should turn a blind eye to any new witnesses, that they shouldn't think for themselves and decide, I'd like to hear from this witness, I'd like to ask them questions myself.
Right.
And I also said, I think that the leadership in the Senate would vehemently disagree, that they don't have the authority to call whatever witnesses or to request whatever documents they want in this trial process, that they're not just going to take what the House gives them.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was sort of my point, and I didn't probably give the most empathetic response, but I was trying to keep it very clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
As to, I did say that, you're saying that the Senate should not call new witnesses or hear new evidence is not in alignment with the previous two Senate impeachment trials in the history of our
Correct.
country,
Correct.
right?
It's not in alignment. So that's the truth. That's the truth that was bubbling up inside you. It's like, wait a minute, they called witnesses with the other two. We should be able to call, the Senate should be able to call and call witnesses in this one. I mean, and the person that posted the original one was saying, truth looks like talking to the people that were in the room. If truth were something that would exonerate, wouldn't you think that'd be a good idea for the person to bring truth from the people that were in the room? And the trouble is, there's not a pursuit of truth from both sides. There's not a pursuit of truth. There's a pursuit of protection. From one side, there's a pursuit of information from the other side to find truth. There is a bunch of smoke in the room about where the truth is. It could be in one corner, it could be in another corner, but there's a bunch of smoke in the room, and somebody that is a completely autonomous, independent person that has access to all the choices that they've ever had in their life all the time. Can you imagine a person, a human being, having access to all the autonomy and all the choice that they would like all the time, and having the speed to just say, I want this, and then people would follow it, and then there would be money placed there, and the people would follow that choice no matter what? That's the mindset that that's currently in the office right now.
Yeah, it's
The
that of a
president.
king, right? It's the mindset of a king.
It has a king, but it's not a benevolent king as much. I'm trying to think of the word. What's the opposite of benevolent, I guess? It's like, it's a somebody that beloved, benevolent and beloved. Thank you. A beloved
Okay.
king is considering everyone with their decision. That's a beloved king. Yeah, the king's going to piss off a person this way or that way, right? Because it's like, I voted, I did this, I made this decision, I did this, because I got born into this governance, and I wasn't really very good at it, but all of a sudden I'm in charge, but now I have all this power. So that's one of the problems that the United States was dealing with when they decided to do a republic, and having the fight for a republic is, we're not going to hand it off to the next person in one family's line. We're not doing that. What we're going to do is see if the people can find the best person for this position that's going to lead with the best interests of the entire nation, not a king that picks favorites and gives and section offs a country to the favorite people. And that's England before all the nobles are here, and everybody's in charge of different regions, and they get appointed by the royalty, and they're going to do what they want to do in that region. But at the same time, the queen or the king is going to make decisions. So the republic, and having a republic, means that everybody's got a say. The idea, though, of a republic is that we're going to pick a leader that has the interest of all people to the best of his or her ability. So the Senate does get to call witnesses because it has called witnesses in the past. The Congress does get to vet those witnesses and put its best case forward on why they think this person is to be just impeached, and decide on the impeachment piece, which they did. President Trump is an impeached president. Whether or not he's going to leave the office is going to be a part of the Senate vote. He, just like the last president, may not leave office until the Republic votes him out. That's the way it might go. Yeah, it would take 22, like it says, or 23 senators to have him removed, and it would take 6 or 7. I think in a previous podcast I said there's the importance of 7, 6 or 7 senators going like, wait, just let's at least let's have some integrity with the process, even though we're not going to, vote to get him to leave. So really, really problematic. Really, really problematic. So
it is problematic. And the thing is, to me, it's so important to be able to discuss this with one another, and to be able to do this in a civil way, and in both sides, in order to restore some, respect, and for everybody to um, feel like we're moving forward together here, and not just
Yeah.
two divided, bodies
Yeah.
of people.
Integrity. It's also got to be integrity with integrity with um, the oath that the you know and that the
That the
that all
senators
of
took.
the senators and all the Congress people took about, this is what the law said. And even Nancy Pelosi says, that sometimes there's a push, sometimes it's not worth it to go letter of the law. I mean, she didn't say it as succinctly as I did, but if we were looking at the Mueller report and you went letter of the law, there was enough there.
Sure, they would have impeached him for obstruction of justice.
That's right, if there was the letter of law. But the republic and the messaging to the voters in our republic was confused. Therefore, they're going like, this is all they did. He only did this and this and this, and he said this and he did this, and yeah, that's kind of right, and yeah, it's kind of, but it's not strong enough. Regrettably, as soon as he got it exonerated, or it looks like it was not a big deal, then all of a sudden he upped his game and pressed it out, because that's what a person does when they always have choice in their life and always have people giving him respect because of his wealth. Do you respect a wealthy person over a poor person, Tom?
No.
Hmm.
I mean, well, you're asking me if I give them more respect. I don't know if respect is the word for me, but
Good.
there are definitely differences between a
Yes.
wealthy person and a poor person, but re, and sorry, I guess that wasn't the answer you were looking for, but
No, it's a good answer, because it was exactly where we are, called the healthy discourse. So let's you and I sit in a scenario so you and I can have a little fun here. Okay, you ready?
okay.
Because this is an internal exercise, right? Okay. So you and I are you and I are coming out of a dinner, and um, we're coming out of a restaurant. There's valet there. We're waiting for a valet person, and a homeless person walks by with a shopping cart.
Okay.
At the same time, a rich person gets into, a Mercedes
Okay.
or Lamborghini or
Yeah.
Aston Martin or
Some really expensive
some
vehicle.
really
Okay.
expensive car, right? That two forms of two human beings dealing with their world is very, very different from our capitalistic value set. That person is successful and respected. That person is poor and not respected.
Okay. I would agree
Just
with
from a
that in
capitalist,
general.
I'm
Sure.
just doing a
Sure.
capitalist mindset. I'm
Okay.
not doing a compassionate mindset right now. I just
Got it.
said it on the thing, because that person that's homeless, we do not know what took them out.
No.
We do not know that they were a former CEO, they were a former this, they had had a traumatic childhood that they couldn't get themselves away from. They lost all of their money in the housing,
The
crash, and they
housing bust. Yeah,
never
sure.
recovered. And they said, hey, I became homeless here and I lost my wife and family. Gosh, now I have no responsibility or accountability. Otherwise food and find a place for me to camp. And that's all they have. That's all they
Right.
need. If I just get food restrooms, camp, and I have enough money for that, I can live in that space. I don't have to report to anybody. I have a lot of choice and freedom. I have independence. Yeah, it's a little comfortable at night, and yeah, it's a little dicey if I don't find food. But do I have to work for anybody? Do I have to do anything during my day? Nope. Sort of like a retirement home.
Right, right. And when you asked me if I had more respect for one than the other, I mean, I didn't really feel that way. Do I think that the wealthy person has a bigger need for respect? Perhaps. There's a lot of interesting things you could talk about there,
That's
but
correct.
um, I don't necessarily think the rich person deserves more respect. And I don't know. I'm obviously approaching this from my own biases. I mean, we have a mutual um, business acquaintance whose company has been rated by the SEC and has taken over. The company is done, and this guy was seemingly on top of the world a year
Seemingly
ago
a year
and
ago.
killing it with a company on the Inc. 5000 list 3-4 years in a row.
Yep.
And it ended up being a big Ponzi scheme, essentially, as what there's accused of, I should say.
Yes.
And the SEC has rated, and now that person is out of work, out of money, going to be prosecuted, may very well go to prison for a bunch of years. So, I mean, the whole wealth equaling respect, I know in America that does tend to happen.
It
You
does.
know,
It
I think
does.
it
It does
does, but
tend to
that's
happen.
not my personal viewpoint.
Okay, so now let's
So
turn all of
maybe I
this stuff.
messed up your analogy, but
Never you did. Never. So the awareness that our values, respect, fairness, integrity, follow the rules, it's exactly right. Somebody could be really on top of the world and somebody, is not, you know.
sure.
So very, 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 very troublesome. So if somebody's trying to fight for and trying to deal with the rules of things, it's really, really trouble, because then all of a sudden it's what is criminal versus what is moral.
Now that I agree, and I think that that's a really important question in our current political discourse and our current political, what's the word, experience with what our
Yes.
government is doing.
Yes.
So you have a good example from another Facebook post, don't
I
you?
I
That gets to
do.
this.
I do. And the bridge between the two things is okay. So the quote that the thing that the post that was on um, um, my Facebook that came through the feed line was that the Dalai Lama, it was a Washington Post article. The Dalai Lama says Trump has a lack of moral principle. Okay. A
Okay.
lack of moral principle. So when that post goes up, somebody is going to now vent their pain. And so one person wrote, I think it is inaccurate to say Trump has a lack of moral principle. He has, this is this person speaking, he has no moral principle. He is a sociopath with malignant narcissistic personality disorder. He has no consciousness. He will do whatever he wants, whenever he wants to, get whatever he so desires. Now, that post and the post above, after reading the article, I started thinking to myself, well, what's a compassionate response to President Trump? What is
Well,
he
yeah.
really doing?
Well, and I think it's important, just quickly before you give that compassionate response, for us to acknowledge to our listeners that both the Dalai Lama saying Trump has a lack of moral principle, and then the person who first commented saying he has no moral principle, he's a sociopath, etc. Both the Dalai Lama and that person were labeling Donald Trump.
They were placing of judgment and some labeling about that. The observable, though, if I want to stay in a compassionate observation of what's taking place for this 70-something-year-old person, human being,
Right.
whether it's the homeless person or the rich person that I also could be compassionate for, whether it's you responding to the inaccuracies on the post that you are pointing out, as well as the person trying to figure out and or protect, the president the way they were looking to do it. There is another road to go, and it's the high road.
I think we're in sore need of the high road, Bill.
We gotta pick the high road on this.
Yeah.
Which is, how do you look at the things that President Trump is saying and doing and acknowledging the good reason / the good need that he's trying to get met by every single post that he posts?
Or at least bring awareness to the need that he has. Don't you think that's even helpful?
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, a lot of the times he's stirring the pot in order to either meet the need for respect for himself, meet the need for choice. I want to do it this way because I think it's the best way. Meet the need for identity. This is the way I think America should work. And, meet the need for protection for the choices that he just made. So I decided to craft a compassionate response to both the Dalai Lama and to the woman that responded to. I just say, well, or you could just have a compassionate response. And so the first part of it is President Trump meets his needs for respect, acknowledgement, being heard, choice, recognition, identity, and self-worth when he texts or when he writes, when he responds. It's at the expense of the nation's need for integrity, truth, respect for other nations and others, people, as well as the need for stability. Now, the need for stability is a little bit dicey here because as soon as you start picking sides and making a voter pick a side, the person then sits on the side and gets justified to do a tragic act towards the other side because I voted for this person. This person is speaking the way I would like. Therefore, I get to act out on this person that's different than me. Now, that bias and that thinking error is not true, but you cannot convince the person that's not true because they make it true inside their head. So, and the hard part about it is this compassionate response, to a person who meets their needs at the expense of others. Trump is not in alignment with the oath that he took when he raised his hand, put his hand on the Bible. He is not in alignment with what he said right from the beginning. Because if he was, he would have moved to the center. Still got some of the things that he got met, but wouldn't have created all the wreckage that he wound up creating. And not really dealing with the major systemic problems in the United States, which is a collective problem, not a how can I take care of my people and not take care of the other people. That's called a collective collaborative or a collective cooperative mindset. He does not have that. He does not have, we're all going to get there because we're a nation. He has it, this is the way I see the nation working because those people are, and then just fill in whatever bad thing he would like to say about the other person. All right. So when you hear me talk this way and you notice how there's a calm in it, but there's also a sadness in it because we're so far away from it. Does that make sense inside your body?
It does. Yeah, we're really far away from truth.
We're really far away from truth.
When you talk about these things that Trump is doing, meeting his needs for respect, acknowledgement, being heard, identity, self-worth, etc., at the expense of the nation, that is sad.
It's so sad. So sad
And
because it's yeah.
mm,
Yeah, it is so sad. And then all of a sudden it's like, if I want my need for respect to be met, well, I want to give things to people I respect, people that are wealthier than I am. I'm going to give them things so they respect me more. Meanwhile, they're not. He doesn't know that, but they're not respecting him more. And that lesson he'll learn when he comes out of office, when people don't take him, that there's groups of people that are going to welcome him and celebrate him and think he was the greatest things and want him in the room because he was the president and he did cause the big tax cut and they believe that they can value their industries and their livelihoods at the expense of the nation or expense of the world. And really, 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 really huge, really, really different. So, and it's really just good to kind of back off our judgment and realize this is the duality that we're facing, rather than making him the that he's the one bad guy we got to get rid of, which is, we all know that that's not particularly true. He's not the one bad guy. He's a person. His thinking, his way that he is applying the Constitution to himself is fitting his needs. It's not fitting the nation's needs.
not at all. And he also makes a huge part of the American population believe that he cares about them and that he's doing things to help them, when that
No
doesn't
evidence.
really in
It's not
alignment with
translating.
with what he's done. Like for example, he talked about the tax cut that he signed into law
Right.
was going to more than be paid for by economic growth. And he talked about eliminating the nation's budget deficit in so many years, when in fact he has ballooned our budget deficit over $3 trillion since he took office. It hasn't reduced it at all. And that's something we're all going to pay for in years to come.
We are. And the immigration that's coming into our nation is not worrying about the people on the border. It's one, automation through technology is what's killing jobs. So now your job that you train for, that your expertise is not needed. Thank you very much, but good luck scrapping it out on your side. And then the second part of it is that the immigration is that there's not enough talent in the talent pool for the jobs that are at the high functioning jobs. So we have this gap that we need to fill with foreigners. with the talent. So guess what? Companies are hiring people in. I mean, Microsoft has done that for years. They've went into other countries and say, who's the brightest, smartest kid in this class? They put them in their institute. Of course, then they get to move to the United States. They move to stuff, and there's a whole industry about plucking talent from other countries
For good reason,
for good reason.
I think.
I want the talented person. We're not as interested in growing, nurturing, and developing talent here. We do not do that.
Which is regrettable.
It is. Now, there's some states that are looking to do that. Some states, I'm thinking about Michigan specifically, that are looking to grow talent. So they are giving money. The state is, giving money to businesses to train, their employees, so they can upgrade their employees along the way, so that this person doesn't fall off and become unemployed, and then you're stuck. But that bill hasn't been passed yet. So do they have the courage to do it? Or are they smart enough to say, wait a minute, we got to do something about the talent? All right. So with all this said, Tom, can you see how these two simple posts on Facebook have stirred an emotional venting from the different people? And yeah, it feels good for a moment to call Trump a sociopath for a moment, but it's not helpful.
It's really not helpful. I see it an awful lot, and I've often stayed away from commenting on these conversations because I do see people are venting. They're exasperated. They're feeling like things aren't going the way they want it to. They want to be heard, so they're meeting their need for being heard. And okay, that's fine. But all of people seem to be much more bold in their comments, putting them in writing on social media than they would be speaking to someone in person, because they don't have to absorb the visual of the expression on someone's face or see how they're reacting to them. They have some sort of safety or security to be free from that type of response or feedback. But then, I see the statements going back and forth being very harsh, very sharp in claims and attacks. And it's in general not been a very healthy civil discourse, I find. But there are exceptions. But in general, I'm disheartened at all of the speed to label and diagnose and accuse others, and it's not helpful to
Well,
how we're gonna move forward.
the good news, there's a good news and a bad news. The good news is you've got to, in order for your own emotional management, you've got to extend acceptance that the person that is writing doesn't have the skill to become compassionate. It's just an easy mental health piece. You go like, this person does not have the skill to be compassionate and empathetic to that person. They went to label and diagnosis. Why? Because here's the bad news. We've been trained to label and diagnose each other. We have not been trained to be compassionate or to move things forward. We've been trained to make things more criminal than they need to be. We are disproportionately putting people in jail that don't belong there, that are not a threat. They did a bad thing. They made a mistake. By the letter of the law, this punishment is way too harsh for the action that they did. That is problematic. Now, would I, if I ruled the world, like things to be more compassionate and empathetic? Yeah. Am I going to get that? No, that's what I'm working for. And that's why I get employed the way I do, is to help people do that, whether it's a company that I did 2 weeks ago, or a association that I did, another week, that another couple that, are fighting with trying to dissolve a marriage, because they're looking at each other with enemy images, and they look at themselves with enemy images, and it's wrecking. The problem is that this is this person's humanity that we're talking about. This is not, it's not labeling and diagnosing this person as being evil. It's getting to closure,
It is, once you have some awareness of skillful use of language by working with you, Bill, or listening to your podcast, it really is sometimes shocking when you look through social media how many people really have no awareness of skillful use of language or
Nope.
compassionate or empathetic use of language. It's really so absent in our culture.
Yeah, it really
It's
is.
unfortunate.
Yeah, it's we cannot change the things that have happened to us. All we can do is change the frame in which that picture sits. We can only change the way we think about it. How can you change a traumatic event in childhood, as if many people in the nation have struggled with? How can you change a great loss of a loved one or of an event? I mean, it's even for great sports games. How are, the Packers going to mourn their loss to the 49ers? That's therapy for all those folks, going like, oh my gosh, we got all the way to here, and this is as far as we got. The end of the road is here. I need some serious therapy as a player before I ever get back onto the field again.
Yeah.
They have to have some way to participate with the loss. If you don't, then things will not go well. Yeah. So, Tom, let's take a look at next time. I think that one of the things that would be really interesting when we look at truth is that the vote that will come, either that they're going to see some witnesses, they are going to not seeing any new witnesses. They're just going to let the attorneys jaw back and forth to each other for the time period. The senators got to say, yeah, I got to hear them, but I'm not in agreement with them. And they get to cast their vote, because I heard this and I choose to agree that it is not to an impeachable offense. If they choose to go through that pathway, if they choose to do that, things will not really go well. Just look at the turnaround from Nixon to Ford to Carter to Reagan, because that was the turnaround from the Nixon, who would have been impeached and didn't have the votes to stay in office. Resign, Ford, Carter, Reagan. Right? If they do not see, if the Republicans decide to stay with their current course, and the momentum of the Democrats being known and advocate for things of integrity, if they get to be known as that, then the Republicans won't see the light of day for 8 12, 16 years or whatever.
Well,
It'd be
and
really
what
tough for them.
It'd be interesting to talk about that, because I've been talking with people about that, and it seems, if the senators really don't call new witnesses, don't see new evidence, and sweep this thing under the rug of the Senate, and then the president remains in office, the people I've been talking to seem to believe there will be a much bigger backlash against these senators
Absolutely.
in the Senate who have refused to honor their oath that they took,
That's right.
and the consequences may be much more severe for their party than if some of them decide to hold the current president responsible for his actions.
That's correct.
So
correct.
yeah, that'd be interesting. I'd
Yeah.
like to talk about that. I'll look forward to that.
That's a big piece. All right, Tom, this has been a good one. Thanks for facilitating and bringing your part of the story. It's always good to get that back and forth of how to understand how to purchase truth and the different powers that be that are trying to influence the voter to get them to ingrain themselves into my truth is better than this other truth, rather than this is what's criminal, this is what's moral. And we're looking for what the moral piece is for these elected officials, not just the criminal piece.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill.
Awesome, man. All right. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.